After a few weeks off from our standard format, as I was sharing the frameworks of my system, the Peak Method, it's time to get back into the Q&A portions of the podcast. Up today is all things trigger points and trigger point therapy. I was recently asked about my take on trigger points, the role of it causing pain, if I treat them, and my overall take on them. For those of you that have been listening to the podcast for quite some time, you know I am never shy about sharing my insights on all things musculoskeletal care related. My goal is to always help inform and educate, but most importantly, look at everything out there truly objectively so we can all have better data to form our own opinions. I hope you enjoy the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Soft Tissue Revolution podcast. Dr. Matt Maggio here. I'd shared over probably the last month my 4 frameworks to help massage therapists easily double their income without working any harder or getting burnt out, and shared behind the scenes of the frameworks that I created called the Peak Method. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen. It's some of our most downloadable, I think I said that word right, episodes to date, and really showed how we're making changes and totally flipping the musculoskeletal / conservative care treatment method upside down. Really good stuff. But I want to get back into some of my more normal, I guess, format and podcasts. A lot of people reached out to me. They're like, hey, I like when you talk about treatment and things like that. And I like talking about that as well. It's my strong point, but I'm also really good at talking about marketing and sales, and they're important too. So I don't want to focus solely just on treatment and things like that. I want to have it all because you need it all in your business for it to thrive and survive in the craziness that we are living in. But today I want to talk about trigger points. I get a lot of questions about this. I get a lot of hate mail. I get a lot of gurus out there that reach out to me and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. A good story. I'm trying to remember when this was. This was, I think, last year. I invited somebody new into the Facebook group, and a lot of you people listening to this probably came in as well that way through LinkedIn. I had made a video about trigger point therapy and trigger point treatment. Basically just kind of asking some questions about it. Nothing like bashing. I know I can, in my history, bash some things, but I was just asking some questions. She came in and got fucking nutso and blasted me and said that she was the guru of trigger point therapy. She had written the manual on it, all this stuff. And I don't know what I'm talking about. All this stuff. First off, you didn't create the manual. It's a lady named Travell. She did it a long time ago. So you're wrong. But this is what happens when you come across people, especially when they truly believe in what they do. It's called conviction bias. Conviction bias. No matter what you do, that's what's going to happen. She went nutso, blasted me, went crazy, sent me messages everywhere. And was like, I can't believe you invited the self-proclaimed trigger point guru into here, blah, 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 blah. She got her own issues. So needless to say, she's not in the Facebook group anymore. And I keep getting questions about trigger points and questions, specifically when I'm doing some of my marketing videos and sharing it with people. They're like, well, do you guys treat trigger points? So I was like, shit, I should probably just make a podcast about it. So let's get right into it. I took some good notes today. I'm going to try to stick to it. And I got some extra coffee here too. All right. So what exactly is a trigger point? I tried to scour the internet for this and really find a true definition of it, but I essentially look at a trigger point as a reaction inside a muscle that's happening to some type of stress or problem that is happening in the surrounding areas. So there's always 2 things that I look at, a trigger point versus scar tissue. So what we treat and train in the Peak Method is the identifying and finding and fixing of scar tissue. So trigger points and scar tissues are actually not the same thing. So if you look at a trigger point under a microscope, a trigger point looks exactly the same as a normal muscle. It's just having a response because something is going on. Where scar tissue, when you look under a muscle, it looks all discombobulated and unorganized with immature collagen fibers and all stuff just kind of thrown in there and a big mess of just junk. Yeah, I got pretty technical there, but yeah, a mess of junk where a trigger point looks normal. But a lot of times people think that they're actually treating trigger points when they're actually finding scar tissue and vice versa. So I always go to this question, and this is something that nobody really likes to talk about, but it's important. And I always say, why? Why are things happening? Why are trigger points happening? And nobody does that. I even look back at some of my downloads and stuff, and some of the podcasts where I talk about the importance of thinking critically and figuring out what's wrong with your client. They don't get as much downloads because people don't want to actually like think about things. They just want to jump right into treatment. They want to be able to massage the hell out of it and just get right in there. Instead of taking the time to figure out what's going on, why it's happening, we miss that. And the problem is we're not getting taught that in school. We're sure shit not getting it taught in all these technique gurus and things like that. They're just teaching treatment, and we want to jump into treatment instead of actually knowing what's going on. So ask the question, why is this happening? Usually there's an underlying problem. A lot of times there's a disc injury, there's cartilage damage, there's tendon damage, and there's a lot of things going on, and these muscles respond to protect the area. It's called protective tension. I learned this from my mentor, Dr. Bill Brady, back in the day. This idea of protective tension, when there's damage to the area, the body is going to tighten up to protect that. So these trigger points are forming for that reason. Think of this as like the same thing when you sprain your ankle. Your body knows to limp because it's unloading that area. So if trigger points are forming, you got to get in there and figure out why that's actually happening. Like, why is that going on? Is there a bigger problem in there? Is there a tendon problem? Is there a cartilage problem? Is there a disc injury problem? Is there a tear? Is there a nerve getting stuck? Those are all important. Even Travell, the lady who founded all the trigger point therapies and things like that, she kept saying in her writings and things, she couldn't figure out why these problems kept coming back, specifically in the low back where she was treating the QLs or the quadratus lumborum, treating those trigger points, and people were getting better temporarily, but it kept coming back. She didn't understand the pathology of what's going on, that there was disc injuries in there was other problems, and those muscles were tightening up. So she was treating it, but she wasn't actually getting to the root cause of the problem. So those trigger points were happening for a reason. So she was a pioneer in the idea of identifying trigger points, but we have to evolve on that and understand why this is happening. Once again, why is this happening? So why don't I train practitioners in the peak method, and why don't I treat trigger points? I have a couple reasons. Number one is, once I've identified why that trigger point's happening, I know there's bigger problems underneath. And usually what happens is when you release these trigger points or you allow a temporary window, you actually expose that bigger underlying problem. So say someone has a disc injury in the neck and their traps are getting trigger points to protect that. You go and free up those trigger points. Now what happens is it allows this temporary window where they feel better, but it exposes that disc injury even more. And the other thing is it's just treating healthy muscle. And in all honesty, there's no need to do treatment if it isn't going to help improve function. At the end of the day, you have to improve function long term. And if you're only treating healthy muscle that causes a trigger point, yes, symptomatically they feel better, but any treatment that only addresses symptoms but doesn't improve function is actually dangerous in the long term. And in all honesty, you get better long-term results from actually reducing scar tissue, then adding strength with functional based treatments. So it comes down to this. You have to decide, are you a symptom-based practitioner or a functional-based one? You know, you can't really be both. Like, symptoms tell you that there's a problem, but function lets you know what's going on. So you got to kind of be in the middle of the symptoms and function, but you have to decide what type of therapist you want to be. And I highly recommend being a functional-based one, because if you're just treating trigger points, they keep coming back, and then you scratch your head and you never know what's really going on. So what to do? Continue to ask the question of, why is this happening? If someone is really flared up, it is okay. I'm giving you permission. If someone is really flared up, especially when their disc blows out or they slept on it wrong or they're having a problem and they're really flared up, it is okay to do some symptom relief and do some trigger point treatment to help things relax. But you must explain and educate what is going on with the client, that they must relax and rest, not go back to doing other things, because you alleviated the symptoms, but you didn't fix anything. They need more work once it settles down. So yes, you can do that to help them feel better temporarily, but you have to explain, hey, I'm not going to release these and then you're going to go out and run a marathon or go do a heavy ass CrossFit workout. You need to relax. Here's why these are happening. People need to know why. They need to be told what to do. They need to be educated better, and then get them back in very soon and actually start getting to the root cause of what's going on. I always give this analogy to a lot of our clients and people that I train. Think of like your thumb being stuck in a car door. And a lot of times the car door is all that bad tissue. And what happens a lot of times, if that bad tissue is scar tissue, then you can treat it and open it up slowly. But a lot of times when you open it up and it's a trigger point, you just free that thumb up right away and it causes bigger problems. I don't even know where the hell I went with that. But essentially, what happens when you treat trigger points versus scar tissue is you expose the muscle and there can be bigger problems. Cartilage problem, disc problem, ligament problem, tendon problem, nerve problem, all sorts of problems. And the best part is we have a free training series specifically for that, so you can better understand and communicate what's going on. And lastly, ask the people that are teaching this treatment modality, what are the mechanisms and data to show that it is actually improving that doesn't include subjective symptoms of the client, functional-based tests, measurements, palpation, pictures, real data. Because if you're continuing to chase trigger points and not getting to the root cause of what's going on, you're doing your clients a disservice and you're doing more treatment than you need to do. That's all I got for today. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for listening. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you're a massage therapist and you want to learn more about our new methods that allow you to easily double your income without working any harder or getting burnout, we have some free resources for you. 1, join our Facebook group, The Soft Tissue Revolution. 2, subscribe to our YouTube channel. 3, request our free training series. 4, leave us a 5-star review and share this podcast with anyone else you know it can help. Links to all our channels and free training are in the show notes.